This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Taking a listen right now to continued testimony, specific testimony in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. This is Ryan Pillar taking the stand. He's a Gilbert police officer, and he's testifying in that trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. Audio from the 4th of May, 2023. Let's take a listen.
All right, before we commence with testimony, then, I will inquire of the witness, who's now under oath, Officer Pillard. Have you reviewed, read, or listened to any of the trial testimony at all that's taken place since this trial began?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. With that, then, you can conduct your direct examination. I would request that the witness talk directly into the microphone, make verbal responses to any questions asked so we keep a clear record, and try to avoid speaking at the same time as any attorney questioning you. Ms. Smith, you can go ahead and inquire on direct.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please identify yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell your last name?
Yes, my name is Ryan Pillar. Last name is spelled P as in Paul, I-L-L-A-R, first name R-Y-A-N.
And, sir, how are you employed?
I am employed with the Town of Gilbert Police Department, located in Maricopa County, Arizona.
Okay. How long have you been a police officer in Gilbert, Arizona?
I was hired in February of 2007, which brings me to a little over 16 years.
Okay.
Your Honor, prior to going forward, I would lodge an objection as to 404B. I know that the court has ruled on that, but to preserve our record on appeal, we'd like to object to him testifying pursuant to 404B.
Okay. Ms. Smith, I understand the objection. Is there anything the state would like to add before the court makes a ruling on that?
No, Your Honor, the court we took this matter up before the court in advance, and we understand the court's rulings, and this witness will have some evidence that is 404B, but he is also part of a sort of joint law enforcement effort to find the kids. So partially there'll be 404B, and partially there will be stuff relevant to this investigation.
Okay. The court's considered that objection then for the jurors. We keep using this term 404B, which is just an evidentiary rule, so you don't need to be concerned about the number, simply that you will be instructed on what evidence is to be considered and how, and you've previously been instructed on this type of evidence. You will be again at the time of your deliberations. The court will overrule that objection as it relates to any 404B evidence, noting that any previous hearing that was decided by the court that this evidence would be admissible for a limited purpose. And with that in mind, and for the reasons I indicated in that February ruling incorporated into this decision, the objection is overruled. And Ms. Smith, you can commence with your direct examination.
Thank you. I believe you indicated you were a police officer in Gilbert, and you were there for 16 years. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your training and background?
Yes, I attended 18 weeks of the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy, followed by another 18 weeks of field training in the field while working as a police officer in Gilbert. I worked on patrol shift, working both day shift, swing shift, and night shift throughout 9 years. In August of 2016, I made a lateral movement from patrol to our Special Victims Unit, which is a detective unit designed to investigate crimes against children and sex crimes. In August of 2019, I laterally moved from the Special Victims Unit to the Violent Crimes Unit, where I was responsible for investigating violent crimes to include but not limited to robberies and homicide. And then in August of 2021, I made a lateral movement back to patrol to pursue some other avenues within the Gilbert Police Department.
Can you tell us a little bit about your training that supports your experience as an officer in Gilbert?
Yes, through Arizona Police Officer Standards and Training Board, I've attended hundreds of hours of continued training. Some specific training would include a 40-hour forensic interview training. I've attended a 5-day homicide investigation training, a 5-day child crimes and sex crimes related training, and multiple interview and interrogation type training. Also, I have attended some 40-hour course on evidence collection and identification for crime scenes.
Now, in your capacity in for the violent crimes investigation, did you become involved in an investigation into an attempted shooting at a gentleman by the name of Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes.
What was the date of that attempted shooting?
October 2nd, 2019.
Okay. How did you become involved in that situation?
I was working as a detective at that time. I was actually in a meeting with fellow detectives, and we were notified of a shooting that occurred in the area of 3875 East Phelps Street in Gilbert. And as the Violent Crimes Detective Unit, we responded to further investigate that scene.
What did you find when you got there?
Upon arrival, the Phelps Street runs east and west, and the crime scene tape was set up with police vehicles to prevent any type of further contamination. At the address of 3875 East Phelps was a black Tesla with Arizona license plate that ultimately returned to Mr. Brandon Boudreaux. Brandon Boudreaux is also present at the scene. He is the resident and the individual who was shot at and called 911.
So once you were at the scene, what steps did you take?
I was assigned the primary investigator. I then delegated tasks to my fellow detectives to include collecting evidence at the crime scene and canvassing the area, while I tasked myself with interviewing the reporting person / victim, Mr. Brandon Boudreaux.
Were you able to interview Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes.
Was he cooperative?
Yes.
Okay. What, if any, information did you learn that caused you to take steps, further steps in investigation?
So speaking with Brandon, I ascertained what he did that morning. So I learned that morning he left his residence with his 4 children in common with his wife at the time, Melanie Boudreaux. And he took his 4 children, 3 of them to school, and another child, their youngest, to meet with Melanie at another residence in Gilbert. Brandon then met with his friends to go to the gym, and then returned to his residence at 3875 East Phelps in his vehicle. As he drove towards his residence, he observed a gray-colored Jeep Wrangler.
I'm going to object to this testimony as being hearsay. These are all things that Mr. Boudreaux apparently said.
Well, Your Honor, I apologize. I'll let you.
I will sustain that in terms of the specificity of what was stated there by Mr. Boudreaux.
Okay. So what information did you learn from Mr. Boudreaux that led you to take any investigative steps?
After he returned home, he was shot at, and then we conducted a canvass of the area and spoke with neighbors, collected ring footage, and ultimately confirmed that there was a Jeep that was idling in front of Mr. Boudreaux's residence for approximately 1.5 hours. That Jeep was described by Brandon and by independent witnesses, as well as ring footage, as a gray-colored Jeep Wrangler with a Texas license plate. Additionally, that Jeep did not have a wheel affixed to the back of the Jeep Wrangler.
Why was that significant?
Jeep Wranglers, two-door Jeep Wranglers specifically, have wheels on the back that would prevent the back window from being able to be opened. In Mr. Boudreaux's interview, he explained that when he approached his house, the back window of the Jeep opened up.
Again, I'm going to object to hearsay.
It's to explain. I'm sorry. Counsel, go ahead.
He's indicating what Brandon Boudreaux told him.
Okay. Your Honor, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. It is to show why this officer made the observations he did and then what steps he took next based on what he received.
Okay. I'll overrule the objection, but instruct the witness to try to avoid making direct quotes of what was told to you by someone else in the course of the investigation.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
So you were explaining the relevance of the Jeep window?
Yes, I'm sorry, ma'am. So the Jeep window cannot open up if that wheel is affixed to the back of the Jeep Wrangler. If that wheel is not present, in this case, the window is able to be opened up. Again, with ring footage and independent witnesses that were talked to at the scene, a gunshot was heard from that area. at about 09:14 hours, which is when Brandon Boudreaux returned home. Again, confirmed with witnesses and digital evidence.
So, in addition to learning information about the presence of the Jeep, was there any other physical evidence that led to corroborate what you had learned from Mr. Boudreaux and then led to you following up on that information?
Yes. There was a bullet hole in the front A-pillar of the driver's side door of a Tesla. So there was actually a bullet hole. I guess I can just describe it A-pillar, kind of towards the top of the driver's side door. The projectile fragments were recovered, some of them. After the shooting happened, Brandon called 911 and drove away from the scene. So we canvassed the area to look for other fragments, but ultimately the ones that were recovered were from the bullet hole within the vehicle. The windshield was also shattered, where Brandon explained where he was shot at. There was shards.
Your Honor, it calls for hearsay. He's saying what Brandon told him.
Sustained.
Okay. Were there shards of glass in any particular area of note to you?
Yes. So additional to the bullet hole, there were shards of glass in the roadway where it was believed Brandon was shot at.
Okay. And did you also, in addition to looking for physical evidence, did you learn any information that led you to investigate a possible motive for the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes.
What did you look at as a possible motive for shooting at Brandon Boudreaux?
Brandon denied having any enemies or anybody who would want to
object to hearsay, Judge.
Sustained.
Okay. Without telling us what somebody said, if you could just give us what information you had that led you to lead somewhere else. Did you have any evidence to suggest at the time that Brandon Boudreaux had enemies?
No.
Did you have any evidence that you obtained that indicated possible marital or spousal disputes?
Yes.
What information did you possess that suggested there was a spousal dispute or marital problems?
I learned that Brandon was in the process of a divorce with his wife, Melanie Boudreaux, and learned that his aunt, Lori Vallow, had a brother, Alex Cox, who was involved in a homicide in Chandler, Arizona, the death of Charles Vallow. Chandler, Arizona is a sister city to Gilbert. We actually share jurisdictional lines. So when Brandon told me about his marital problems with Melanie, combined with the recent homicide, that furthered our investigation to look into communicating with Chandler police about what they investigated.
Were you able to reach anybody at the Chandler Police Department?
Yes.
And did you learn anything that led you to investigate the possible motive or potential suspects from Chandler Police Department?
Yes, it was learned from Chandler detectives that a homicide happened within their jurisdiction in July of 2019, where Charles Vallow was shot and killed by Alex Cox. And present at that scene was Lori Vallow, her two children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. Additionally, with meeting with Chandler PD, we learned of a gray-colored Jeep Wrangler with Texas license plates was present at their crime scene.
Did you learn who the suspected primary driver of that vehicle was?
The registered owner was Charles Vallow. However, his daughter, Tylee Ryan, was using that vehicle to and from school.
So upon learning this information, what steps did you do to follow up on the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux?
So upon learning this information, this Jeep became a primary piece of evidence for our shooting. So we checked LPR hits. LPR is an acronym for license plate reader.
And did that check of the license plate reader system yield any results?
Yes, it did.
What results were developed on the license plate for that Jeep?
Again, the The license plate readers revealed that the Jeep Wrangler with the Texas license plate, and I can't recall the license plate right now, I have it in my notes, but the license plate was captured traveling southbound from the area of Idaho Falls on 9/30 of 2019, continued southbound in the area of Holbrook, Arizona, which is northern Arizona, on October 1st, 2019, and then that Jeep returned to the area of Idaho Falls on October 3rd, 2019. Brandon's shooting occurred on October 2nd, 2019.
And each of those places where it was located was based on description and actual license plate reading?
Yes, so a license plate reader runs specifically off of the plate itself. Of note, one of those cameras was a DEA camera, a Drug Enforcement Agency camera. They are along different highways. And it captured an image of the Jeep driving southbound towards the area of Phoenix metro area. The Jeep did not have a wheel affixed to the back of the Jeep. There was no wheel on it.
Upon receiving this information, upon receiving this information about the license plate reader, did you take any steps to reach out to any other law enforcement agencies, specifically in Idaho?
Yes.
What agency did you reach out to?
Initially, Fremont County Sheriff's Office was contacted. This was in conjunction with another death that was learned. So based on a death that was learned of Tammy Daybell, that combined with the Jeep being up in the Idaho jurisdiction, we contacted Fremont County Sheriff's Office and then communicated with Rexburg because we gained information that a address was being utilized off of Pioneer Street in Rexburg, Idaho. And we began to suspect our Jeep was somewhere within Fremont County or Madison County.
Okay. So when you say another homicide, did you learn information that Tammy Daybell had passed away?
Yes. Again, I had regular communication with Mr. Boudreau. He reached out and notified me of a death of Tammy Daybell.
Why was that relevant to you in your investigation?
Because according to him, Tammy
Objection,
Daybell...
Judge, this is calling for hearsay testimony.
Agreed, that would be hearsay.
Did you have a reason to believe that any of the people of interest in your investigation in the shooting into Brandon Boudreau had also had a spouse who'd passed away within proximity to the time when Brandon passed away?
Yes, there was information that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell had a relationship in Idaho, and Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell, died near the time of Brandon's shooting, shortly thereafter. So I contacted Fremont County Sheriff's Office where Tammy's death occurred. I spoke with a coroner up there to discuss how the process works for death investigation in that county. And also we inquired about the Jeep we suspected to be in the area.
Okay. Were you able to contact any other law enforcement specifically to help you locate that Jeep?
Yes, we made contact with the Rexburg Police Department, and communication began directly with Detective Hermosillo.
Okay. And when you say communication, specifically about what?
About our Jeep, and we were looking for our suspect, Alex Cox, and we believed he was up in that jurisdiction.
Okay. So when you say your suspect, Alex Cox, at this point, why was Alex Cox a suspect in the shooting of Brandon Boudreau?
We completed search warrants for cellular tower data and cell phone data, and it revealed that Alex, one of the phones he was using, was traveling within the area of Brandon's residence and actually was parked in front or near Brandon's residence during the time of Brandon's shooting, and then left the area shortly thereafter and back towards Idaho.
And so understanding that you had a person in interest or a suspect, were there other individuals you were interested in as well?
Yes, his wife, she was still his wife at the time, Melanie Boudreau, and then, of course, wanting to talk with Lori Vallow and check welfare of the children that were involved, which is Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow.
When you say you wanted to check the welfare, what caused the department in Gilbert to want to check the welfare of, or the departments in Arizona, correction, to want to check the welfare of either J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan?
So once communication was had with Chandler PD about their homicide and our attempted homicide, we communicated with the FBI to get some assistance with the cellular data analysis, because it's quite complicated, in my opinion. I'm not a cell phone guru, so. Once communicating with them during that meeting, a big question arose of when was the last time either Tylee Ryan or J.J. Vallow were seen, their welfare. So despite our desire to locate Alex and interview him and process the Jeep, of course, locate and process the Jeep, another focus became, let's check the welfare of these two minor children while conducting our further investigations.
Had either department in Arizona received information from any of their relatives looking for those children?
Yes, Kay Woodcock spoke directly.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
What information, without telling us who said what information did you have that caused people to ask law enforcement to locate JJ and Tylee?
Again, I'm going to object as the only way that he can answer this is through hearsay testimony.
That'll overrule. I think the officer's allowed to indicate what he did in the course of his investigation based on generalized information received.
Okay.
So within this law enforcement meeting we were having, it was brought up that family members were concerned because they had not been able to see or communicate with either Tylee or JJ at all, via electronic means or otherwise.
And so with that information or conversation, was the request made back to Idaho to locate either of those children?
Yes. Prior to that request, the Jeep Wrangler involved in the Gilbert investigation was located at this Pioneer address, which Rexburg police were able to impound for future processing. Rexburg also assisted by then going to the Pioneer address where it was confirmed that Alex, Lori, and Melanie Boudreau were living, and they attempted contact with those members and attempted to locate and check the welfare of Tylee and JJ.
And were they successful?
They were successful in contacting Alex, Chad, and Lori, but were unsuccessful in locating the children.
And so with Gilbert learning that they were unsuccessful in locating Tylee and JJ, what efforts or position did the Gilbert PD take in continuing their investigation?
We knew we had our Jeep for our shooting, but with the contact that Rexburg police had on October 26, 2019 with Alex Cox, Chad Daybell, and Lori Vallow.
I apologize. Maybe I misheard you. Was it October or November of 20?
I'm sorry, November 26. I apologize. It was November 26 when this contact was made. It was relayed back to Gilbert police that it was told to them that J.J. Vallow was in the custody of Melanie Gibb. Melanie Gibb was a close friend to Lori Vallow. Melanie Gibb additionally lived in Gilbert, Arizona. So the Gilbert Police Department, myself and a partner detective of mine, went to two respective residences where Melanie Gibb lived, and she was not at either location. Telephonic contact was attempted with Miss Gibb and unsuccessful. However, messages were left for her to return a call from myself. It was, I want to say, approximately 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. that evening where I received a call from Melanie Gibb.
Objection. It's going to be hearsay, whatever he's going to say next.
Sustained.
Okay. So Did you learn information from Melanie Gibb that caused you to be concerned for the whereabouts of J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan?
And I'm going to object as to the only way that he can answer this is through hearsay testimony.
Yeah, that's not being offered for the truth of it. It's for the furtherance of the investigation. So on that, the objection on hearsay is overruled.
Thank you.
You can answer if you remember the question.
Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. Did you learn information from your conversation with Melanie Gibb that caused you to be concerned for the whereabouts of J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan?
Yes, I did. She told me she didn't have.
Objection, it's hearsay. He just said she told me.
Well, as to direct quotes, again, yeah, that would be sustained as hearsay, what anybody's directly quoted as having said to you. So, Ms. Smith, ask another question, please.
Did you learn information without saying what someone said? Did you learn information that caused you to be concerned for the whereabouts of J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you continue to look for J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan in Arizona?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you look in Arizona?
So we set up poll cams at Melanie Gibb's residence because, again, we couldn't contact her and she was not in the state of Arizona during my conversation with her. So we set up poll cams, which are cameras that monitor 24/7 a specific location. We then began making contact with known family members and friends to both Lori and then friends that would have been in high school with Tylee at a point in time, as well as where JJ previously went to school.
Did those contacts yield any results in locating JJ or Tylee?
No, they did not.
Okay. Did you also communicate with any other law enforcement officers about that there's no evidence of JJ or Tylee in Arizona?
Yes.
And did you communicate that with Rexburg and Fremont?
Yes, we had regular telephonic meetings since we were all a little spread out to compare notes of where we were at in our investigations, and nobody had located any evidence of the children.
Okay. And this was in November and December of 2019?
November 26th was the contact with Melanie Gibb, and then November 27th of 2019 is when Rexburg continued their investigation at the Pioneer address.
Okay. And so despite the efforts in Arizona to put up a poll cam and to reach out to family members and to reach out to school members, did you have any evidence that J.J. Vallow or Tylee were in Arizona?
None, and that includes speaking with her brother, Colby Bryan.
Okay. And did anything about what Melanie Gibb cause you to call another law enforcement? What Melanie Gibb said to you caused you to call another law enforcement office?
What Melanie Gibb told me?
Yes.
Yes, I communicated with Rexburg Police Department again about what she told me, yes.
Okay. Why did you talk to Rexburg again about after your conversation with Melanie Gibb?
Because it was believed Melanie had custody of JJ.
Okay. And did you have any evidence from Melanie or anyone else that that was true?
No.
Okay. And so then did you communicate back to Rexburg about the possibility that JJ would be back in Idaho?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Because all evidence we had at this point with the Gilbert Police Department and Chandler Police Department is JJ Vallow was not in Arizona.
Okay. Now, did you continue your investigation into the shooting at Brandon Boudreaux?
Yes, ma'am.
How did that investigation continue?
We continued, again, we processed the rest of the vehicle for any type of physical evidence, Brandon's specific vehicle. Then, with regard to the Jeep in Idaho, myself, a crime scene technician, and a infotainment specialist, which is somebody who knows how to study computers and vehicles. The three of us flew up to Rexburg, Idaho, where I met with detectives in Rexburg, and we processed the Jeep that was in the police property building. That process included photographs, collection of biological evidence, and collection of GSR evidence. GSR is an acronym for gunshot residue evidence.
Okay. So And what were the results of the GSR?
The GSR evidence was collected at the rear of the vehicle, near the back window and within the vehicle, and the GSR results tested positive for evidence of a discharge of a firearm.
Okay. The chemicals that could be there were present in the back of that Jeep?
That is correct.
Okay. It's not a definitive ruling, but at least the chemicals were there.
Correct.
All right. Now, I just want to be clear, because then it may be the way I ask the questions. What date was it you did the search for of the Jeep?
The search of the Jeep, I would have to look at my notes,
Okay.
if I may.
Did you have notes and bring them with you today?
I made notes with dates because there was a lot of dates
Yeah.
involved in this.
May he be handed his notes after defense counsel looks at them?
Yes.
Thanks.
Am I using the mic okay? I don't want to be too... Thank you, sir.
And the rules are you need to flip it over. So, okay, are you done refreshing your recollection?
Yes.
Okay, that's all right. We just follow the rules.
I got you.
All right. What date did you go to search the Jeep in Rexburg, Idaho?
The Jeep was searched on November 18th, 2019.
Okay. And so when you and teams went up to Rexburg to search that Jeep on November 18th, at that time, what was law enforcement's interest in Tylee Ryan?
Tylee Ryan was, again, known to be using the Jeep, believed to be using the Jeep, so we were checking to see if she used it, also if Alex used it. But again, we hadn't seen or located her as of that date.
Okay. And in fact, did you ever see and locate her?
No.
Okay. And then after that, I believe you said November 26th was the date law enforcement reached out to Lori Vallow about JJ?
It was November 26th that the welfare check for the children by Rexburg Police Department was made. And then the call I received that night from Melanie relaying information that said otherwise. And then November 27th, which was Thanksgiving, Rexburg then completed a more intensive search of those properties where Alex, Lori, and Melanie Boudreau were living.
Okay. And so after that, what sort of steps did you and the Rexburg Police Department take in this investigation?
Again, primary focus on locating the kids now. I was tasked with writing search warrants for cellular data and location data for the involved parties.
Okay. When you say the involved parties, who are we talking about at this point?
At this point, I'm talking about Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Melanie Boudreau.
Okay. Talking about Tylee Ryan, did you receive information about any cell phone data related to Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
What was that data?
The data showed her device was utilized both in Arizona and in areas of Idaho, and at the point of our investigation, it was now showing in the area of the Hawaiian Islands, Kauai.
Okay. And this was in December?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did it ever show up anywhere else?
I believe it was in Missouri for a brief time.
Okay. And that was the cell phone of Tylee Ryan, correct?
That was the cellular device that was associated with her cell phone number and provider, yes.
And subsequent or sort of contemporaneous, because all these things are kind of happening at the same time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you have information as to the relationship between Brandon Boudreaux and Melanie Boudreaux in terms of divorce or together?
They were legally married still, but they were nearing the end of their divorce at the time of Brandon's shooting.
Had there been any discussion of life insurance?
Brandon and Melanie had a life insurance policy that required each of them to sign in order to modify or null and void the life insurance policy. At my time in contact with Brandon, that policy was still valid, and if Brandon were to die, Melanie would get $200,000 or more.
And did you have any information about how much Melanie had received as a part of their divorce settlement from Brandon Boudreaux?
Relevancy.
Motive, Your Honor?
Relevancy.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
I've made a ruling on that, Ms. Smith.
Okay. Was there, without the amount, was there a payout from Brandon Boudreaux to Melanie Boudreaux as a part of their divorce proceedings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you have any evidence to suggest that cash had exchanged hands between any of these people of interest?
Objection. Relevancy.
Part of a conspiracy, Your Honor.
That I'll overrule.
Thank you. Did you have any evidence that cash had been exchanged between any of these parties involved?
I'm going to object unclear as to who these parties are.
Yeah, that was vague.
Okay, when we say the parties, the people you have identified looking for the cell phones for, Melanie Boudreaux, Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, Tylee Ryan. Did I miss anybody? Alex Cox.
Alex Cox.
Okay. These 5 parties, and as part of your investigation, monetary gain is often a motive for homicide, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So looking at cash amounts and cash's exchange between people or how much money somebody stands to benefit for a homicide is an important factor for an investigator to look at, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you receive evidence that any of these 5 people had exchanged money or cash?
Yes.
What information did you have?
There were Venmo exchanges that were made, and there were also substantial amounts of money that were exchanged that were referenced in text messages with each other.
Okay. And while you were looking for Tylee Ryan, did you find any evidence that she'd ever enrolled in college?
No.
Did you find any evidence that Tylee Ryan ever drove that Jeep personally after September of 2019?
No.
One moment, please, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Officer. That's all, Judge.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any cross?
Your Honor, we know that the court has a prior ruling in February regarding the 404B evidence. We believe that all of the information garnered today in testimony was either 404B or so intertwined with 404B that we could not be able to effectively cross-examine him without losing our right to this 404B on appeal. So we're not going to have any questions.
Okay. I understand, Mr. Thomas, then, so there won't be any cross-examination. Then that would conclude the testimony of Officer Pillard.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
with Tony Bruschi.
That was testimony from Ryan Pillard taking the stand, Gilbert police officer in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of the courtroom audio, discussions, and more as we bring it to you right here. My name's Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.